Hello, dear friends, and welcome to our weekly program, which we're live broadcasting from Northern California, from BSH, from Divine Light. We're going to YouTube, we're on Facebook, and we're inviting you to join us. We are focusing in our weekly study on the Spirit's teachings of the Gospel according to Spiritism. And today we will be looking into chapter 8. Now you may ask, what is chapter 8 of the Gospel according to Spiritism? Well, it is entitled, Blessed are the Pure of Heart. Every chapter in the Gospel begins with some quotes from the Gospel, and then Allan Kardec offers his interpretation. And we are focusing then on the second part of each chapter, which is dedicated to the Spirit's teachings. Different spirits on high come through with their own interpretation, with their own analysis of each chapter. So what is Blessed are the Pure of Heart all about? When we look at Allan Kardec, we're going to just give you a few items to summarize, and then we're going to go right into the Spirit's teachings. So essentially he says, who are the pure of heart? The pure of heart are those who are simple and humble, people of simplicity and humility. Anyone who is like them are pure of heart. He talks about adultery, that adultery is not only happening in action, but also in our minds. He speaks in that chapter about true purity is not only displayed in one's actions, but also in our thoughts. Then he summarizes and says, persons who do not even conceive the thought of evil have already made progress. Those who still do and recognize it and then work on themselves are even further on the evolutionary scale. And then those who don't even have any evil thoughts anymore have reached their goal. Then he talks about unclean hands, and then that we cut off our hands if they're a cause of scandal, the same with eyes. And he essentially says one must uproot from one's heart every impure sentiment and every immoral tendency. Now, let us move on to the Spirit's teachings. So this is exciting. We're going to get more facts, more information on what it means to be pure of heart. He starts off by offering us an analysis by John the Evangelist, and it is entitled, Let the Children Come to Me. We are reminded of Jesus saying exactly that, and it was in conjunction with being pure of heart. So we're going to share the screen to add a few visuals to you. Let's see whether there's any technical stuff coming through, but here we go. It doesn't look like it. That's the good news. And hello, Mark, and hello, Tony, for joining. Thank you so much, dear friends. It's so lovely. It's so much more fun when we can study together. If there's more than two in my name that gather, there I shall be as well. So we are lucky because we're three, and maybe more that through YouTube. Of course, we don't know that. So, okay, so here we go. The Spirit's teachings, chapter 8. We will be looking at item 18 next. So here he says, and we're not going to read every single word, but enough so that we know what we're learning. So Christ said, let the children come to me. Profound in their simplicity, these words do not imply the mere calling of children. So this is important. When Jesus said, let the children come to me, it wasn't purely the children, as our picture implies. It was more than the children. And let's look who he actually called. Because Jesus always talked in allegories, and when he addressed the multitudes, he was actually including everyone. right? There's not just little sections of society that he addressed. So he said, profound in their simplicity, these words do not imply the mere calling of children, but the souls that gravitate in the lower regions where misfortune knows no hope. Aha. So here's another, the children, yes, but also he called the souls in the lower regions. So children are developmentally, souls in lower regions are developmentally on a psychological, emotional, mental level like children. Jesus called unto him the intellectual infancy of the full-grown person. So he called the intellectual infancy of the full-grown souls to him. And he called them also children. Now let us define the intellectual infancy of the full-grown souls a little bit more. By that he meant the weak, the enslaved, and the wicked. He could not teach anything to physical infancy, of course, which is subject to matter and the yoke of instinct. So when he spoke to let the children come to me, he did not mean adults, just children, because his words would have just passed by. So what he was really implying was the souls in the lower regions, the intellectual, those souls that are still dwelling in intellectual infancy, like the wicked, the weak, and the enslaved. Jesus wanted people to come to him with the trust of those little beings of wavering steps, just like children. His calling to them would win him the hearts of women who are all mothers. Thus, he could submit souls to his tender and mysterious authority. He was the initiator of Spiritism, which in turn must call to itself not little children, but mature individuals of goodwill. Here's another definition. Children, so-called children, are mature individuals of goodwill. And Spiritism, that follows Jesus' teachings, is exactly doing that, calling those souls to it. A vigorous process has begun. It is no longer a question of believing instinctively and obeying mechanically. It is necessary for humans to follow the intelligent law that reveals its universality. And for that, we must be intellectually developed enough to be able to understand God's law, the law of love. And we're so lucky that we have the Spirit's book that helps us bring God's law into our conscience. Because really, where does it dwell? It does dwell in our hearts, right? So we do have it inscribed in us. It's just we also want to engage our day-to-day mind. Dearly beloved, the time has come in which errors once explained will become truth. We will teach you the precise meaning of the parables. Truly, I say to you, spirit manifestations are increasing on the horizon, and Spiritism is the messenger that will shine like the sun on the mountaintops. Do we feel that way? Do we feel that Spiritism is shining the light into our hearts and minds, is illuminating our path so we can negotiate the ups and downs, the vicissitudes of life more intelligently, more aligned with God's will, more obediently, more surrenderedly? So that was John the Evangelist, helping us understand what Jesus meant by calling the children to him. Right, let us move on to the next, item 19, which came by a protector spirit. So here he says, let the children come to me, for I have the milk that strengthens the weak. Let all come to me who are fearful and feeble. So this adds to our list of the pure of heart, the children, the so-called children that Jesus addressed. Those are the fearful and the feeble. And those in need of support and in need of consolation. So these two are the souls that come to Jesus. And we may know it from our own lives, that when we are in crisis, we may have for the first time turned to Jesus and to God, or we're more likely to turn to Jesus and to God because we need help. Let the unlearned come to me so that I may enlighten them. So to be unlearned is another category of those children, the so-called children. Let all those who suffer come to me, the multitudes of the afflicted and unfortunate. I will teach them about the great remedy that softens the ills of life, and I will give them the secret of healing for their wounds. Yes, and that Jesus does, the great consoler. He has the balm of all balms for our wounds. And what is that? And this protective spirit helps us out. So he says, my friends, what is this supreme balm? Possessing virtue par excellence. This balm that may be applied to all the wounds of the heart to heal them. What is this balm, dear friends? What do you think it is? This balm that heals all wounds that Jesus brings to us. It is love. It is charity. Of course, you guessed right. It could have only been love and charity is a form of love. And it's, of course, also, most and foremostly, the moral charity that is defined as goodwill towards all, no exception, indulgence towards others' imperfections, and forgiveness for others' trespasses, and of course for our own, which is the culmination of our charitable work on this planet, or even beyond. So this wound, this balm that Jesus carries, this magic balm that he carries and brought to the world for all the wounds we all have, is love, is charity. And for us to receive it and actually go to Jesus, we need to be pure of heart, simple of mind. We need to be open like a child, ready to get assistance. If you possess this divine fire, what will you fear? So if we possess the fire of love and charity, what will we fear? Every moment of your life you will say, my Father, may your will be done and not mine. Absolute surrender. If it pleases you to try me through pain and tribulations, may you be the blessed, for it is for my own good, and I know that it is your hand that is weighing on me. That is wisdom. If we can say, okay, I will completely surrender, even to the pain that I may experience in this lifetime, because I know it's for my own good. Then we can really take in the balm, this beautiful balm that Jesus carries, and that we, because it's a gift to us, hopefully then pass on to our brothers and sisters, because that is part of charity. What we receive also, not just for our own healing, but to pass on and help in the healing of our brothers and sisters. And if we can't be the facilitator of the healing, that's okay. We can't expect that. But we can share the gifts and plant seeds, and then it's up to the gardener to nurture and nourish them. Oh Lord, if it pleases you, do not allow your divine love to sleep in my soul. Do not allow your divine love to sleep in my soul. And you're going to say, oh, what does he mean by that? No, here it is. May I unceasingly lift up to your feet the voice of my thanksgiving. So this is part of sharing the gift of this balm. It is being grateful and passing it through, letting it pass through to our brothers and sisters in need. If you have love, you have everything there is to be desired on the earth. If you have love, you have everything that is desired. You have everything there is to be desired on the earth. That is beautiful news, isn't it? So we know what we need to do. We need to allow our love to flow out towards us and everyone else, and back to the divine and our mentors. Yes, it's beautiful. It's so clear. All we need to do is remember that we have these magnificent tools in our toolbox, and we need to use them every minute of every day. Where are we? So, you will feel the weight of matter grow lighter as a result of love, and like a bird soaring in the sky with no memory of earth, you will ascend without ceasing. You will ascend forever until your exhilarated soul satiates itself with life in the bosom of the Lord. That is the promise. Now we need to just practice. All right, dear friends, the balm, the supreme balm is love and charity. So let us move on to the next item. This is now item 20. Item 20 has a different title. It's called Blessed Are They Whose Eyes Are Closed. Whoa, what does he mean by that? This comes by Vianney, a priest of R. So he's talking about the blind. Now, why would we be blessed if we're blind? Let us see. He starts off with suggesting a prayer to us. He says, "My good friends, why have you called me? Is it so that I might place my hands upon this poor sufferer here and heal her? Ah, such suffering, good God. In your afflictions, therefore, always look to heaven. Say from the bottom of your heart," and here's the prayer. So when we're afflicted, this priest of R is recommending the following for us. He says, to look to heaven and to say from the bottom of our hearts, from the bottom of our hearts. See, this is so important in prayer that we feel it. It needs to be an overflow from our soul, Leon Denis says in his book, After Death. It is absolutely important that we feel the prayer. It comes from the depth of our soul, not just a mental concept that we speak without being connected on a feeling level. So, but here it is. My Father, heal me, but may my infirm soul be healed before the infirmities of my body. That's really important. May my flesh be chastised, if need be, so that my soul may ascend to you with the whiteness it had when you created it. Dear friends, this is really important, because many times, and we've seen that, for example, having been at John of God's, people come and expect to be healed in the flesh, in their bodies, and then they turn angry sometimes and say this is not doing anything, because they don't like or cannot recognize the healing that happened on the soul level. And then it's being judged as no healing has happened at all, because of course soul level healing is very subtle and it's not as obvious, as tangible as the healing in the body. So if we have cancer and we're seeking healing, we go to a healer of one form or another, and we expect the body to be healed overnight. Here it is confirmed that our prayer is supposed to allow that our infirm soul, which is the root cause of our illness, of our suffering, and it's not just illness, any suffering, the root cause of our suffering, the soul gets healed. Because then the body, which is the densest part of us, will shift as well. All illness manifests on our subtle level, the subtle bodies first, and then ultimately manifests, calcifies in our physical body. And the reverse is true when the healing happens. And I speak out of experience. I've experienced it myself several times. Healing happens first on the soul level, and not made sometimes for years, and maybe not ever in this lifetime in the physical realm. That doesn't mean the healing hasn't happened. So my Father, heal me, but may my infirm soul be healed before the infirmities of my body. After this prayer, my good friends, he says, which the good God will always hear, strength and courage will be given to you. And perhaps also the healing that you have only timidly asked for as recompense for your self-denial. So here's a few more ingredients, a few more items to download, to work on, to be conscious of, to practice. And that is that we focus on the healing of our soul. Our soul is the immortal aspect of us. And if our soul, we're focused on the healing of our soul, the body will automatically be positively impacted. And once we utter these prayers, once we express these prayers, and the so-called healing in the body that we ask for is not apparently happening, let us look for courage, as this priest promises, and strength that the spirits on high, that God and Jesus bestow upon us in order for us to continue on our healing path. It is a beautiful thing, dear friends, but it requires of us to become more subtle ourselves, to be more observant, to tune more in, to feel the shifts. I will tell you that those who have been deprived of this sight, remember, it's about the eyes and not being able to see, should regard themselves as the blessed one of expiation. So this is a radical concept, that now we are the blessed ones when we are blind. Why would that be? And let us see. Let us get the answer to this question, why that would be. Remember that Christ said, it is better to pluck out your eye. If it is evil, then it would be better if it were cast into the fire than the cause of your perdition. So this hints towards the answer. But Jesus said it's better to pluck out the eye than have the eye be the cause of our perdition. Alas, how many there are on your earth who someday in the darkness will curse having seen the light. Oh yes, how happy are they who in expiation have been struck in their sight. Those who've lost their sight, how happy are they? Their eyes will not be a cause for scandal or a cause for downfall. They can fully live the life of the soul. They can see more than you who see clearly. So what he's speaking about, what he's saying is that when we're blind, there is a good reason for it. We know the law of cause and effect, and there is nothing in this universe that doesn't have a reason, a good reason, and everything is designed for our own good. So when we are blind, he's teaching us, there's a good reason for it. And we're blessed to be blind because we may have in the past, or we may be prone to using our eyes for evil purposes. And to avoid that, God is so good that he put a veil over our vision. So if we cannot abuse our eyes in this lifetime again, it's like a crutch to keep us upright. God is so merciful and good, isn't it? So loving and kind. And it feels so good when we actually see how it really works. The truth. This is the truth. And like in so many cases on our planet, we have it backwards. Most cases we have it backwards, unfortunately. But we're learning. We're becoming closer to the truth every single day if we want to. And this right here is another piece to our puzzle. You would not be asking to see images that are less pure and less sweet than those that have been given to you to behold in your blindness. So with being blind, we can see more sweetness, more clarity, but not to the outside, but into the inside. We can see other souls. We can tune in. We can see a lot more, according to this priest. Oh yes, blessed are the blind who want to live with God. They're happier than you who are here, for they feel happiness, they touch it. They see souls and can soar with them in spirit realms that the predestined of your earth do not see. The open eye is always ready to cause the soul to fail. So let us listen to that. Let us make sure that we're not falling prey to this. That our open eye is not ready to cause the soul to fail. Let us give an example. With our eyes, we can commit adultery. It's just one example. With our eyes, we can shoot arrows of hatred. We can literally kill with our eyes. Our eyes are very powerful. They're more powerful than we may be aware of. And then when we see certain things and use our eyes for certain purposes, then we commit an evil. So when we don't see, God in its mercy allows us to not fall into old patterns so that we won't fail. The shut eye, on the other hand, is always ready to enable it to reach God. Believe me, while my good and dear friends, blindness of the eyes is often the true light of the heart, while sight is frequently the dark angel that leads to death. It's beautiful, isn't it, dear friends? Isn't it lovely? Not only will we experience our brothers and sisters who have poor eyesight or are blind now from a different perspective, but also we can guard ourselves against using our eyes for less than the good, for evil purposes. Let us be mindful of how we make use of our eyes. And of course, this does not only apply to our eyes. We can do it with anything, with our ears, our tongue. There's other organs that are equally important and can equally be misused for evil purposes. Even our sexual organs, right, friends? So this is a lesson that the eyes are only the placeholder for the concept. And now a few words for you, my poor suffering women. Wait and be of good cheer. If I were to tell you, my daughter, your eyes shall be opened, how joyous you would be. But who knows if such joy would not lead to your loss? Trust in the good God, who bestows happiness and allows sadness. I shall do everything for you that is allowed, but you in turn must pray, and especially meditate on everything I have just said. This is a really important lesson, isn't it, dear friends? Very important for us to become more mindful. So this priest, Vianney, taught us to recognize, to tune into the healing that happens on the soul level, to focus on that. Also to feel the strength and the courage that comes from our prayers. And furthermore, he shows us the blessing in not having eyesight under the circumstances, because it helps us to stay the course, to stay on the straight and narrow. God is always merciful, always looks out for us. What appears to be suffering and awful in the short term is when we look behind the facade and to the outcome of the overall picture, or the direction we're going and what we are looking to attain. It is a blessing. This too can be a blessing. So Allan Kardec finishes this chapter with a comment, and this is item 21. He says, whenever an affliction is not the result of acts of the present life, one must search for their cause in a previous one. Whatever is called a whim of chance is no more than the effect of God's justice. So whenever we see something that appears to be unjust, appears to be a whim, appears to be cruel, awful, we so quickly jump to judgment. And this is another thing this lesson is teaching us, to withhold our judgment, because we don't know the bigger picture. Just now we learned not to judge blindness, but to see the blessing in it. And here we are reminded whatever is called a whim of chance is no more than the effect of God's justice. There is no whim of chance ever in the universe. Everything is an expression of God's justice and mercy. God is all merciful and just, not just, but also merciful. And that is the combination that we hopefully recognize, start recognizing more and more so in our own lives and in the lives of our brothers and sisters. But also, we're invited to become more just and merciful ourselves. We're reminded of George in the book Liberation by André Louis Trujillo. George was the lord of the underworld. He was the judge of all judges. And boy, did he judge. He had a whole team, hundreds of spirits that would be executing his harsh judgments. He was just and he was judgmental. But what he was lacking was mercy, was love. And that is where he became incredibly destructive. It was his mother, who was a very evolved spirit, who came to the rescue with a phalange of spirits who helped rescue George. And that book, which is called Liberation, is an amazing piece of work, helping us to understand what justice, what judgment alone can do. And that is a lot of destruction, a lot of evil. We need mercy, and God is merciful. God does not inflict arbitrary punishment. And the word punishment in this edition, in this translation, is an old-fashioned word. We don't like it. We know that God isn't punishing. Law of cause and effect gets much closer to the truth of God's justice and mercy than the word punishment. So let us call it effect or consequence. Let us say God does not inflict arbitrary consequences. God always wills for a correlation to exist between the wrong and the consequence. Law of cause and effect. The wrong is the cause, and the so-called punishment is the effect. And who is responsible for it? We are. Nobody else. We're doing it to ourselves. That's why Emmanuel in chapter 10 of Thought and Life says to undo the shackles that we have forged against our own souls. We need to seek goodness, we need to feel goodness, we need to visualize goodness, and we need to mold goodness with all the resources we have at hand. That is how we undo past wrongs. We have all the tools, dear friends. All we need to do is use them. If in the divine goodness God has cast a veil over our past acts, God nevertheless points the way to us by saying, "Whoever has killed with the sword shall perish by the sword." Words that may be translated as the punishment is always according to the sin. So the law of cause and effect. So the effect is always according to the cause. Therefore, if someone suffers the torment of the loss of sight, it is because sight was for him or her a cause of downfall. So, misuse of our sight. Also, it could be that the person was the cause of the loss of someone else's sight. Perhaps someone had become blind as a result of excess work, having been imposed, or as a result of mistreatment, lack of care, etc. So these are all examples that may have caused somebody else to lose their sight because of us. And now the person is suffering the penalty of talion. The person, him or herself, could have chosen such expiation. So this is important too. It's not always ordained, but we may very well have chosen our expiations. Applying these words of Jesus personally, if your eye is a cause for scandal, pluck it out. And that would be if we are wise enough to choose our own expiation, realizing that by continuing to see it in a new incarnation when we've misused our eyes in one form or another, and we just heard different examples, we may better not have any eyesight because we're not strong enough to not repeat the same mistake. God is all just, merciful and just, all loving and caring, just perfect, first cause of all things. God is immutable. God is perfect. And we love God. And God loves us. And the love feels good. Dear friends, that completes our study for tonight. We will stop sharing. Yes, here we are. And there is dear Nora. Thank you so much, dear friend, for joining. And there is Teresa. Thank you so much, dear friend, for joining. It's so lovely to have all of you here. Thank you, God, for allowing us to get together and study these beautiful jewels that have been gifted to us, helping us getting closer to the truth and seeing this life in our own incarnation and that of our brothers and sisters more for what it really is, to see the love, the mercy, the goodness in everything. Thank you, dear friends, for joining. And so, God willing, we will meet again next week with Chapter 9 of the Gospel according to Spiritism. And to be precise, Chapter 9, the Spirit's teachings of Chapter 9 of the Gospel according to Spiritism. God bless you. Goodbye.